everybody. Happy International Women's Day to all of you, and thanks for having me here today. I hope you enjoyed that video and it made you feel as alive, empowered, and hopeful as it makes me feel every time I watch it. Now, before I start with my story, I just wanted to say something that I feel just doesn't get said enough. Let's face it, being a woman in this country, in our culture, is hard, much harder than it is in a Western developed society. When I got asked to do this video, I wasn't really sure where to start, so I thought, let's start from the beginning. I was born and raised in Pakistan, just like the majority of you here. Both my parents are educated. I am the youngest of 3 siblings and the only daughter. I went to a co-ed school, which we all know is not really a given in our society. And I'm not just talking about co-ed, I'm talking about actually going to school, particularly for females. The latest publicly available data for Pakistan shows that over 71% of men are literate, compared to only 47% of women. Just take a moment to absorb that. How appalling are those statistics? And sadly, they are currently showing no signs of improvement. Now, going back to my story, I was always a very studious child and I did very well at school, better than my brothers in fact, and I was almost always within the top 5 students in my class. Life wasn't all rosy though, because I was also a very rebellious child, so I had a strained relationship with my family, particularly during my teenage years. In very simple terms, if anyone told me not to do something, it just made me want to do it more. Now, fast forward a few years to my A-levels, when my brothers, also known as the crown jewels of a typical Pakistani family, went to America for university. Now, naive young Annie thought that, this would open the door for her to do the same, go abroad for university. But how could she? Because the rules are always different when it comes to girls, right? My brothers decided they wanted to go to America, and they just left. I thought I could do the same. Now, what should have been my decision was suddenly the decision of my parents, my brothers, and of course, all of the relatives who continued to express utter shock at why I wasn't already married at the age of 18. Is all of this sounding familiar? I was in Islamabad at the time, and after months of family deliberation, it was decided that I would be allowed to go to university in Lahore and stay in a girls' hostel as a test run to check, if I could be trusted to live abroad on my own. Needless to say, my brothers were never subject to such a test run, but it is also worth saying that they were the reason I was able to stand up for myself at that age. They were the buffer between me and the rest of my family, protecting and encouraging me despite everything. So 2 semesters, 3.8 GPA, and many lifelong friendships later, I realized Lahore wasn't the place for me. I wanted so much more out of life, and I felt my efforts were being wasted to achieve a mediocre degree when I was anything but mediocre. I then started researching and applying to universities in the UK and decided to fight tooth and nail to go if I got in. My mother was anything but happy about this decision. After all, she's a mother and she knows what a privileged and sheltered life I had led so far. So naturally, she had many concerns. How will I cook for myself? How will I clean? How will I wake up in the morning? How will I travel by myself? How will I live alone? Who will I live with? Now, none of these things crossed her mind when her sons went to America. After all, we grew up in the same household, so all of her concerns should have been equally applicable. You see, sometimes we are the victims of our own unconscious bias, and that is exactly what was happening at that moment in time. Like I said, I was a smart kid and got good grades, so I got admitted into the business management program at King's College in London after months of long, protracted discussions, mainly revolving around my grades and how I deserved to go to a good, renowned international university, mainly backed by the males in my immediate family. I finally left for London when I was 19 years old. Now, Lahore was the first time that I lived away from home, but London was a whole new ballgame and what I would call my first proper independent move. New country, new culture. I was always good with numbers, so I had a very clear idea from the start that I wanted to be in finance. So I researched finance jobs, internships, and their prerequisites, and made a mental note to ensure that I met those prerequisites. I was determined to prove my worth, so King's College was never going to be the end for me. London was also where I had my first part-time job, working at the student union to support myself, an experience that was completely novel for me. I would take my university assignments with me to my job and work there during quiet periods where I could to ensure I didn't fall behind. I applied for summer internships in accounting and finance, but this was in the middle of the 2007 to 2009 recession, so any kind of employment was few and far between. I got rejected from a few banking internships, and so I learned from them, and I did mock interviews with my brothers to brush up on my interview skills. Thankfully, I ended up getting 2 offers from Deloitte and Ernst & Young. I accepted the Deloitte internship. I did so well there that they ended up offering me a full-time job in their corporate tax team. So I was one of the lucky few who had a guaranteed job offer after I graduated in the middle of global recession. The pieces were finally falling into place. Now, all my efforts paid off, and I graduated with a first-class honours degree from King's College London. I then went on to work at Deloitte for nearly 7 years, where I trained as a chartered accountant and certified tax advisor while working full-time. That's 20 exams in total. During that time, I also got married and progressed in my career from a junior to an associate director, after which I moved into industry as deputy head of tax for a FTSE 50 business listed on the London Stock Exchange. I've now been there for nearly 4 years, and in that time I have been nominated for my company's Senior Leader Talent Pool program, which is meant for individuals within the business who have been identified by the executive leadership team as people who have the potential to take on bigger challenges and have a track record of high performance and a reputation for delivering results. I'm currently on track to become the first female head of tax for my company, and honestly, I feel truly blessed and could not be happier with how far I've come and where I stand today. And that's my journey. Hopefully, some of what I said resonated with you, and I really hope my story inspires you to believe in yourself and challenge the gender bias in ourselves, our families, and our societies. A systemic change is needed, and it has to be led by women, for women. Remember that you are part of the 47% of literate females in this country. There's not that many of us, so please make it count. Education creates opportunities, and they are ours for the taking. So study hard and dream bigger. Nothing is impossible. Thanks for listening.